Yeah, so hi, my name is Mellow Baku. Thanks, yeah. So I'm sitting on a sofa. I'm a brown-skinned woman with black curly hair and wearing a knitted rainbow pinkish jumper.
Thank you.
And glasses, round glasses.
Welcome to another episode of the Onyx Takeover for Disability Arts Online. And today I'm speaking to Mellow Baku, the fantastic Mellow Baku, who is, well, actually, do you want to tell the listening, watching public in your own words?
Yeah, I'm an artist and into anti-disciplinary.
Anti-disciplinary, I like that.
Yeah. So I probably mostly do performance of some kind, or I have done mostly, and that being mostly music-based and words. So moving from kind of singer-songwriter into doing a lot more experimental kind of soundscape stuff and some jazz, and then later kind of more poetry and spoken word. I've kind of brought that back together a little bit more recently, and creative writing, and then visual, how I know you, Ashok, from the fine art days, visual and digital art, mixed media art. That's one of my little paintings. But yeah, and a little bit of video editing and visual manipulation, animation stuff, and theatre as well, making theatre shows.
Lots and lots of different pies and lots of fingers in lots of different pies as well. Fantastic. So as you know, the theme for the takeover is aram, is rest, but it's not rest as in, you know, kind of the rest that we take every evening. It's much more about how rest fits into our practice. So if you could tell me a little bit about your creative process, and maybe a little bit about how rest fits into that creative process.
It's hard to kind of like strip back apart, you know, the layers that don't speak specifically even to like some of the mental health challenges I have or conditions that I've had recently and things like that, because that all plays into it. And just kind of all things being equal, very similar to you, that I do many things which I wouldn't necessarily have considered to be a way of resting. But I think, you know, as you said, rest can be actually that kind of like, let's say it's boredom that comes in from doing one thing, and then it's like, I can't keep doing this one thing, and so it is a rest. There is a kind of alleviation of going into something else. And for a while, I was trying to kind of find out what that was more. I had this kind of analogy of, you know, when you're making a garden. And there's these companion plants. So I can't remember what it is, but it's like if you have the potatoes, then maybe you put the marigolds next to them because they take a black fly away from the, or this one helps this one, this changes the chemistry of the soil. So I did have this idea that I noticed that when I was doing a music project, and I kept coming away from this studio project thinking I'm procrastinating, and I was just like started to make little videos while I'm like, I can't do that anymore. But then I really did notice that was restful, and it was a way of allowing the mind to come out of the auditory, and even just the fact that this was a paid job with a deadline, and go into this just creating a little video fun thing. And then kind of like, okay, done that for a while. It's better than just like fogging out on Netflix. And then it feels a bit achievement as well. But like I say, for a while I thought maybe there's a formula here that like you have music editing, and then you need to, if I could work out, you know, that then it would be painting, those two go together. So you could sort of take two jobs on at the time, or two commissions that kind of complemented, but I don't know if it's even as formulaic as that. And I also wasn't able to, you know, it's serendipity sometimes, isn't it?
I think you've hit on something quite important in the sense that a lot of neurodivergent artists can't really stick to one medium, or they can't see mediums as things in little boxes. Your visual art will move into something video oriented, or even sound oriented.
There's often the tendency to over connect as well, so I'll be always sort of exploring the same themes but on different levels. So also sometimes, like when I was working for or with the Spark Arts for Children, and then also commissioned by, I'm doing kind of work for 0 to 5 year olds, but also maybe a little bit other work that's a bit higher, so using language and pre-language. And then at the same time I was working on like some of my stuff, maybe creative writing, whether it's around issues around like Black Lives Matter stuff, or my upbringing in a cult. But I found that I am still doing the same work, even for children. I'm exploring like, what does freedom mean? What does being tied in mean? What does it mean when you're told, you know, what does it mean when you're stuck in a jumper and you can't get out, you know, and things like this, you know, for children with this show, when I was working with dancers. But then I'm realising, oh, that's the same as what I'm exploring over there as well. So they're inextricable. But there is that rest of going, especially into like non-verbal work for babies and children, where, you know, everything's a story. You don't have to be saying, and then this happened. You can just tell the story of trying to get in and out of clothes, and you can use just like voice and sound. And then you go into a dense world, maybe where you write a really like poem. So yeah, there's a rest even within who I work with and for. Facilitate workshops with often with target groups that includes mental health service users, of which I'm one, so fellow ones. And actually, as I'm creatively facilitating, some groups are just amazing, and they bring some things back. And then I always have a practice where if I manage to deliver the little invitation or provocation, I'll set the timer and I try and write with everyone.
Right.
And that's partially because I'm not as prepared as I'd like to be, and I really want to make sure that I did fully understand my own exercise. Maybe I didn't have time to do it properly. Yeah. So I sit there with them and I do it. And then sometimes I might, if we've got 5 minutes, I might sort of say, okay, I'm finding that this is the same, this is for me, is anyone else? And, you know, so I kind of move with whoever I work with. And people occasionally say, oh, it's like, it's all about me. I have heard that, you know, even if I facilitate others, and I'm like, yes, yes, it is. Because I think that's where we excel when we're centered in our practice, because the story of me, if I'm sharing it, it has its own integrity, doesn't it, for someone else? So I always find that's really helpful. And then what they bring back can blow my mind.
And we're always trying to measure the world ourselves. We're trying to kind of get a measure of the world, and it's always good to ask people and work with them, rather than kind of, because there is no set dimension for the world, you know. We think there are, we think we should be doing this and we shouldn't be doing this, but no one's really a mind reader.
And we're and you know, especially through poetry, you come to see, but other things as well, what people write about. The story of, is it always the story of me, or the story of everything? Because even if I told the story of a Sudanese man, I just made up in another lifetime, I telling it, like, I can only do it from here.
Yeah.
So this comes through in storytelling, and that's different to the story of like, do I take it on me to be so disrespectful to tell someone's story? I don't mean it like that. I just mean, actually I mean the opposite. Like, so why not just tell my story? Because maybe a Sudanese man will go, oh, and then it's like that for me, but it's not that. I might talk about the story of putting makeup on my face, and there could be something in it, like about masking, or about the violence of the makeup industry that comes through, and then it has a thread. I've had to consolidate somehow, which is not my, you know, as you can hear, I tend to spiral out into it, and then I have to kind of bring something that's a bit more structured, and then see how it works, and then they come back with, oh, that was difficult for me, or that was really easy, that's so interesting, or have you thought about we could do the next one? And it's so great. So that's another resting place for me, and I really love that they're on Zoom as well. So as a practical thing, I'm starting to find a lot of rest in this online thing that most people I know really moan about, but it's been so restful for me, because I don't have to be like out in the world of form, the time, the place, which bag am I using, did I bring this and that, you know. just kind of get ready from about here up.
Yeah.
And a beautiful democratic space.
Yeah.
With everyone in a box.
Mm-hmm.
Get muted if you overspeak. And even for me to set that, I have to then honour it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something in that I'm not always convinced that it's a real world.
Right.
That I'm looking at. So a beautiful detachment, not unkind, but just a kind of like settling down of, you haven't got loads of energies in the room and you're like, who to look at first? You're just like,
yeah.
And
that idea of viewing people and seeing people becomes very different as well, because when you're in a real life space, when you're looking at someone, they know you're looking at them, at you.
Yes, that's true. And you see yourself, so it can be quite interesting and odd, but I enjoy it. I think it's like I'm here and I feel I have more control as well, like as in for the anxieties and things that I sometimes experience. And then I love that, you know, I'm always inviting people to have their cameras on if they can, because it's so lovely to have that energy. So, you know, you're just not, you know, because we share our work. But then also, you know, if you let us know you're there and your camera's off, that's fine as well. So I really love that, because usually in a room I can't just like, okay, I'm going to do this.
Can we talk a little bit about your current recent work? Is it Our Wish?
Yeah. So I was developing with Spark Arts for Children, invitation from particularly like Adele at the Spark had been following my work and then sort of brought Tara into that. So there was quite a sort of a relationship where she'd seen me do a lot with the Spark. So before this development opportunity came, there was a lot of support from that wonderful organisation, the Spark Arts for Children, y'all. And they'd kind of supported other bits and bobs that I'd done. And actually I think I simultaneously applied, because I was very much encouraged to, for some work like as a resident musician in nurseries at the same time as joining their development scheme. So these things were in tandem, but it meant that I was in placement with children, trying things out. So that's really where it started. And so all the little bits and bobs I tried out musically with children were being trialled and are indeed how they responded. So, you know, when they talk about collaborative, what do you call it when they're making the work with you?
Yeah,
there's a thing,
co-creation.
Co-creation, yeah, and I think it's like one of them words. But I mean, they were telling me, you know, because children will tell you. So at the end of something where we're like, the heartbeat, you know, the rhythm, walking to the rhythm of the heartbeat. What can we touch? Tap, 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 and then we come here, and then we tap, 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 and then we found at the end, it's like, at the end, this is where we belong, and then they start going, oh, 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 you know, so they're literally the co-creation, they're children, they just bring it. And you're like, oh, okay, let me follow you. So it's how they do it in lots of different, I don't know, disciplines like Montessori. So you have to kind of follow children to an extent if you want to be creative. So yeah, that's how it started. Can't think, like it went into, there was a little album of children's songs that then I started working on animations for. And then there was an actual specific R&D with a team about maybe making a whole show that incorporated everything I do. The album is called Our Wish. Little kiddie tunes. So yeah, and I'm holding up a postcard that's got like a little collage of children singing sounds of the song. And then with, you know, like Arts Council coming in, and then it just kept building. And we did half of the R&D in lockdown, which was very interesting. And then quite challenging. And then we actually had a national tour. And then the Spark kind of, the relationship grew and they were co-producing. So we went to about 7 venues, and it was very different from all the like little children's songs because actually, Ashok, which is interesting, there was a point where I was like, I love this, it's beautiful work, but how many times I go, good morning, how are you, which is so beautiful with my ukulele, but I also wanted more rich things and more culturally rich work. And so I made a deal with myself, like, I have to really, and everyone, again, it goes back to the self thing, I have to be getting something out of it, because I also know that's when people love watching me, when I'm in my feels. That's when I love watching an artist. I'm in my feels strongly. There's no point doing like, I can't do the eyes and teeth if I don't feel it, you know. Hey kids, So I have to be. So this show, which the feedback we had is that people, you know, who run children's theatres, like, we've not seen anything like it. It was mostly, you know, visibly melanated people. Had Helder dancing from Portugal, you know, Africa via Portugal, and Ana Paz as well, and who's Portuguese, African, Congolese maybe, and Luis Catarega, who kind of came in like kind of mentor consultant. You know, can't really afford what she can bring. Yeah, so I ended up naming her as the project elder. Yeah. So she was kind of like this elder of the project, because dance being my discipline the discipline I'm not really au fait with as well. So a lot of vocabulary stuff. Although that's part of the strength, because it ended up being kind of like hip hop capoeira stuff, which is wicked. And Leonie de Barriga, who's same like half Trini girl, helping with the visuals, so which I was involved in, but she was genius. So it's the team that we ended up with, and two other amazing women, Sophie Fishwick, who's very shamanic kind of practice on drums and percussion, and Rachel Johnson, who I lovingly refer to as my jazz wife. Beautiful soul keys. And then we had Fino Lopes, who's Portuguese. I was like, everyone's talking Portuguese on this project accidentally, on a stick bass. Right. So we did have one, Helder and Fino, but it's very kind of beautiful project. So it was visuals on these floaty kind of curtain screens. I wanted to wrap around a bit, so just about managed it on these frames. And the last two, because we couldn't buy enough projectors, I actually sort of painted them in a similar way. So they were kind of swishy curtains. So the whole space is in curtains. And projections, these amazing sort of flickering projections that provided most of the lighting as well. And sort of dance on the floor, depending on the venue, and maybe bouncing off. Helder was dancing with the music, so he was kind of embodying me, and I was doing a lot of live looping with a live band. That's hella tricky, but great how we did it. So it was just wonderful, and even the musicians ended up kind of being very much performing little things, you know, just standing up like woo, and like responding, and so it's just a gorgeous thing. When I talk about it, it was almost like a sound bath, jazz improv, and it's celebrating the sounds that children make. Yeah. So I do feel like
for children, which is
and
amazing.
It was for early years. You could bring your week-old baby in, and that was the idea, that it would have something to them. And the only feedback that we got, blessed, that I understood it. Parents are like, didn't really learn anything. Like, would have been nice to find out what the instruments were, and we weren't sure, would have been nice if more interaction, they could find out, like, and they want them to learn things, and it was like, it's not
sometimes
what we're doing.
Sometimes it's better just to have a nice time, like for the children to have a great time and be energized.
Yeah, I understood it. It's like, it's literally for their, like, it's their language. And then that was just, obviously we dwell on those small things, because it does say something, like maybe we have to be more, like, if I did it again, like, present it more for what it is.
But that level of investment and the richness that you're bringing in for children is amazing, because one thing that I've noticed is people tend to kind of see children's work as lower,
lesser, and I had that struggle, an artistic ego, isn't it? Because you want the people who, whatever, more cerebral or more and you can. There is something to that, but I think that's where I got very inspired, very much championed by Adele, I'd say, Adele Al-Salam, and then also, carried forward by the whole of the Spark, is this idea, that children are innately creative and that they deserve art, and they don't need to be like, and actually those things are sweet as well, like, because they do like Baby Shark, and they do like polka dots, and they do like rainbows and flowers and unicorns, but they are capable of understanding something that's very profound. They haven't found, maybe they can get more profound than we can. They haven't maybe found, they haven't unlearned profundity yet, so I really loved that challenge to make it very rich and multi-layered. Also, you make work for babies and you make work for adults, because they come with them, and the target audience has a much better experience if the adult is on board.
What I really liked about Omar Wash was the fact that normally people think children's work should be referential to the adult world, and this wasn't. This was much more about.
It wasn't, but it was multi-layered. But it was.
But it was referencing children's experiences.
Yes, it was saying. Saying it's saying adults come and hear this world, because usually even babble or like sometimes I know there's one where there was a child with quite extreme disability, which wasn't something that we took on particularly with that tour, but open to it, but didn't put it forward as a specific to those audiences necessarily, because I just think that might need another and even more, R&D. But there was a child who's very vocal, and very loud, and then sometimes sounding distressed. And I've done a bit of work with Bamboozle as well, which is amazing, very helpful to be able to hold that and not be like, oh, like, shall we stop or shall we just carry on through? And it's like, can we bring this into the loop? How can we bring this into like a looping? Will it be mimicry? Will it be? So it's very beautiful, like sacred work that, in a way, I don't mean to like elevate myself there, but the work of that other people do more than I do, of working with holding space for all the sounds that babies make, but also others that might not sound right to us, or they're crying, or they're and one of the parts of my show is that I'm copying them.
Yeah.
And we always think it's so rude to copy, but children are copying. We're all copying. But
you
that
worked with
informs
jazz
all my
as well
work.
for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, mostly that's just a basic like American songbook. I say just, I'm sorry, American songbook is amazing. A lot of it was kind of up north or anywhere but London, and with much like older guys and more straight white older audiences, and maybe in community centres or backs of pubs.
Right.
Doing and often the bands would be more towards classic and trad jazz, which is not my favourite, but it's fun. Some of it's great. I've learned so much through the lives of Bessie Smith, and everything's to be honoured. But creatively, I wanted to go more exploratory. But I also found there was a barrier for me because I don't read music. I've picked up a lot of music. I can play guitar, I understand chords and that they have extensions, and sometimes I understand those extensions. And I've heard a hell of, there's this circle of fifths apparently. It's just another dimension. Jazz is another language, which I honour. And I've picked up bits of vocabulary from the musicians.
Could you give us a little bit of...
What, a bit of jazz?
Yeah, a bit of jazz, or, a little flavour of your...
Maybe I'll do a bit of looping, but I'll maybe do it with a jazz standard. So usually I'd always work with jazz musicians to do jazz, but then there's some things, we'll see how it comes out.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mellow Baku.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ashok. All right, so it's Black History Month, y'all. So I thought I'll do something relating to that, and also it's a fairly new piece that relates to that, and it's from the music called Mo Better Blues. There's a track in the film Mo Better Blues, Branford Marsalis and Terence Blanchard, song called Mo Better Blues. So I worked it around that, and I wrote some poetry around that, so a bit of spoken word. I'm doing a shorter version of it, and we'll see how it goes. So it get a bit of looping and spoken. And the idea is around how, with like say their name and things like that, it's very difficult for memory, people without memories and things, to hold names. And this idea that we've got to remember everybody's names could become very, very difficult. And sometimes what I love about Caribbean, African and many cultures, music comes into it with grief and with holding the names, and with these events that music and, the job of music and musicians, they can hold the names. So that's where this idea came from. Let the music hold. When the walls sagged with names, bronze plates re-etched, stones replaced and shrines overflowed, with candles melting into wreaths of faces, school photos of smiles stretched over the years and above blazers, crested with arms under neat baby froze, in silver frames, forever contained, firstly for pride of place on mantelpieces, and finally to mark the fall, the X, where countless knees gave way on seeing blood, each name a howl that drowned the scream of sirens. All the names were held in the cradle of chords that gave their coming together into the next coming together. The golden thread of trumpet passed its story to saxophone. Conversation traded lament and jokes, smile and cry, hand over fist. Grace nodded acquiescence. And in each movement, fingers remembered. And breath anchored into the floor that pulsed with notes only wood could make so warm. Head bowed, hand bowed over this line of wound-wound threads. No need to fret, content to be an unseen driver, for rhythm to lean into this long railroad track home. The names rise within the song to show their lives, each one revealing the face of God. Let the music hold your names so I can let go. This love will never change. That's all I need to know. Each one reveals the face of God, colored olive black, olive brown, a rainbow of earth, soil, clay, copper, bronze, gold. They dance in the song like those who followed the golden thread of melody only for joy, and not because they're bound. And we who still chase the golden thread, or are bound by it, like mystics, we hear them in every pulse, vibration, overtone. Like mystics see faces in flames they wish to have the courage to join and pray they never will. Something moves when it is seen. Faces shift. They sacrifice their names to the ones who named and suckled them. We are warmed. All the names are held in the cradle of chords that give their coming together into the next coming together. The golden thread of trumpet passes its story to saxophone. Bass bows to the hand that rides the bars. Piano notes run a little ahead, unlimited by their 12-note cages, saying, remember, we are free to play. So I can let go. This love will never change. It's all I need to know. Let the music hold your name, so I can let go. Love will never change. It's all I need to know. It's all I need to know. Let the music hold your name, so